Oh, boy. Well, let's bring the beer over here and then start.
We are a professional podcast operation.
We are professional.
Welcome to the Professional Boys. We're the Professional Boys. We talk about a lot of different professions, mostly in the accounting and human resources arena. I'm your host, Tyler Armentrout. I'm a professional boy. Sitting next to Chris Whedon, also a professional boy.
I'm a professional boy.
Yeah, okay. That sounds nice. And who else do we got in here?
We got Jerry.
Who is that?
I'm here.
And Jerry's a professional boy.
I'm a history boy.
He's a professional history boy.
Oh, we're not doing
professional boys.
We're not doing my HR podcast?
Tyler.
No,
Get it together.
We're not doing the HR podcast because I am unemployed, which means I am not a professional boy.
Oh.
I'm working my ass off because I work in a grocery store, and I'm one of those heroes that people are talking about on the internet.
Well, anyhow, we are the History Boys, and we're here to talk about history. What do we got today, Jerry?
Today we have a topic that I've wanted to do since the beginning of History Boys. This is something that, it's such a good story, and I really wanted to do it since we talked about even making this podcast.
And real quick, I just want to mention that we've been getting tons of awesome Facebook messages, emails from everybody listening to the show, asking us to do shows on topics that they're suggesting. We are putting them in the hopper. We're doing the research. They are happening. So definitely stay tuned. They're coming down the pike, and probably faster than you think.
Also,
just be patient.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
100%.
Oh yeah,
we
absolutely.
Really do that.
We've been getting a lot of great feedback. We really appreciate it. You guys,
We love hearing from you.
Yeah, we love it.
We were down to like 3 ideas, and you guys saved your asses.
Like shit. We told all the stories from history. Yeah, right? There are more? Oh, thank God.
To that, what are we talking about today, Jerry?
Today we are talking about James A. Garfield and his assassination. Now, let me ask you, Chris. Before we talk about this, before today, what did you know about James A. Garfield?
Well, he really liked lasagna.
And he hates Mondays.
He hates Mondays. Didn't he have like a mustache?
He had a beard.
Big one?
He had a beard.
Bill Murray played him in the movie.
Yeah, Bill Murray played him.
And he seemed like the kind of guy who drank a tonic.
Yeah, drank a tonic or two. I think there's a high school in Seattle named after him.
Yeah, there's streets in Seattle.
I think
named
that's
after
actually
him.
true.
I thought the high school was named after the cat.
Wasn't he a big dude?
He was big. He was a big man.
Fat guy? Was he a fat guy?
No, he was a
Taft.
big man. Taft was a fat man.
Got stuck in a tub.
Yeah.
A
No.
bathtub. That's actually not true. He didn't. That's
A tub of taffy.
Yeah, I was going to say
Taffy tub.
Taffy's named after him because he got stuck in that tub and they had to stretch him.
Whoa! Save that for the Taft episode.
Okay.
No, what you're doing is actually kind of proving my point, is that not a whole lot of people know about Garfield. He was not president for very long before he was assassinated, but he was a very progressive president and one that we should take another look at, and we should understand more, because he was one of the last presidents to really be like a good man.
He loved abortion.
And he invented the Segway.
No.
Not the machine, but, moving from one topic to another topic in a smooth, uninterrupted fashion.
I think that's something that we have to work on still.
Yeah,
Clearly.
take a page out of Garfield's book. And not just the lasagna.
I like my segues to just leave you chaffed. Raw.
So James A. Garfield was the 20th president of the United States and the second out of 4 to be assassinated.
So he wasn't able to buy any booze or pornography yet.
1 year away.
1 year away, man.
Well, no, he could have bought the porn,
He was the 20th president.
but he
That
wasn't
doesn't
the
mean he was
21st.
20 years old.
No, I thought that's how it works. Each president
And
has
that's
to be
actually
the
not
age.
the drinking age at this time.
The
There
first
was no
president was a
drinking age at
baby.
this time.
Everyone knows that George Washington. I was going to say Abraham Lincoln. Fucking live here. Anyway,
You're a history boy, Tyler.
I'm a history boy, and I know that all the first president was a baby. Second president was a toddler.
That's why there was wooden teeth.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's whatever.
I didn't
That's
know.
better than whatever has happened to Tyler.
I honestly didn't know things happened before I was born until this podcast.
Now, Garfield was a large man. He was.
Oh, hell yeah.
He was 6'2" and 220 pounds.
What a beefy boy.
Big man.
Hold on, that is my exact height and weight.
Well, you're a big man.
You're a Garfield.
I have gained so much weight. I'm Garfield weight.
Ooh.
Garfield was a kind man.
Nice.
He was a learned man. He was incredibly educated.
I like a nice boy.
He was radically progressive for the time, and he had a booming laugh and strong convictions, and rather than shake your hand, he would rather give you a big old bear hug. That was the kind of guy he was.
I hope somebody kills this guy.
I hope it's the kind of hug that when he picks you up, he shakes at your back, and it's kind of like going to the chiropractor for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, like your back cracks, you're like, oh, thanks.
Thanks, Garfield.
Thanks,
Yeah.
James.
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Now, James Garfield was born on November 19th, 1831, into abject poverty. He was the last president that we had that was born in a log cabin.
Wow.
Yeah, his father, Abram, whose middle name is From, he died before James was 2. And it was before James was even 4 years old that he had a pair of shoes. They were that poor. But his mom, they kept the whole farm together, so they didn't have to sell the family farm. She kept it going with James's oldest brother, who was a little older than James, and they kept it going.
Right.
And he was very resentful of his brother because he eventually became president and he stayed.
I think his brother was more resentful of him.
Because he wanted to stay on the farm.
Well, his brother wanted to stay on the farm.
Oh, okay.
So, you said that it wasn't until he was 4 years old that he owned a pair of shoes?
That he had a pair
That's
of
what you
shoes.
said, okay.
Yeah.
I bet you he had ringworm as a kid.
He probably had a lot of
For
sicknesses as
sure.
a kid.
Walking around barefoot on that farm.
At the age of 16, James set out on his own to work on canal boats on the Erie Canal. Then the Erie Canal, his father Abram actually helped build.
It was barely eerie at all. It was really pleasant before then.
It was hella spooky.
Yeah, but by the time they were done with it, it was spooky as shit. It was
Yeah, spelled
downright.
differently, right?
Yeah, because they spelled it wrong. That's not my fault.
How's the spooky? Wait, never
The
mind.
spooky way is with 2 E's. The real way, like
Spooky's
the region,
with 2 E?
the regional way is with 1.
So it's spelled Spookee.
I thought it was spelled with an umlaut.
I'm so glad you guys are following me through this. So after a near-death experience where James was basically what was happening is he was throwing like some things like overboard and he fell in and there was a rope that he had with him and he fell in and everyone was asleep. It was at nighttime and he was screaming, trying to get out and the rope that he had, like he climbed up this rope and he's like, oh, thank God, this rope. And he got up there back onto the boat. No one had noticed that he went overboard. But it was there that he noticed that the rope wasn't actually attached to anything, that by some miracle, he was able to just climb up. And he thought that it must be some sort of divine thing. That
he was
had
on the
happened
Erie
to him.
Canal,
It was
right?
good. That's a spooky.
Yeah,
spooky.
Right?
It was ghosts.
I'm telling
it's
you,
spooky.
yeah.
It's the spooky canal.
Either it's that or it's some telekinetic powers, something.
Which is kind of spooky.
So Garfield returned home. He had contracted malaria, but he had went home. And by this time, when you had malaria, people thought, even doctors thought, that malaria was from just being around river water too long.
Oh yeah, I learned about that from Jeopardy.
So when James returned home, like he had malaria, and his mom and his brother nursed him back to health. His mother Eliza, she was very devout, and so was James. They were very religious people, and because of this sort of how devout they all were, it really is something that James would carry for the rest of his life, and it would inform all of his political decisions and everything he would do for the rest of his life.
So religious, but never Catholic.
No, he was
Like most U.S. presidents.
well,
Christian, but not Catholic.
Yeah, Protestant, but not Catholic,
Yeah.
except for Kennedy. But no, Garfield, he truly believed in treating people like you wanted to be treated,
Yeah.
right? He was an ardent abolitionist. And even as a young man, before he was signed up with the military, which we'll get to, he helped hide runaway slaves, which was an illegal thing to do.
Right.
So he was going against, even in the North, it was going against the law to do that, and he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do.
And he said, no, I'm not keeping you all for myself. I'm keeping you away from them.
Well, yeah, he would give them food, he would give them money, he would make sure that they were able to strike out on their own.
Right, like a proper devout religious person, or in this case, somebody who believes in Christianity, following the whole code of don't be a dick.
Yes, exactly.
Treat others how you would like to be treated. Blah blah.
Yeah.
Blah,
And
blah,
also,
blah. And
like,
ultimately, the
to
whole
not
like
be owned.
nobody can judge me other than
In the event that things go
Skype.
flipsy dipsy, then maybe they would be nice to him when all the other people become slaves. That
I don't think he was looking for anything in return.
flipsy dipsy.
So his family, they were all in agreement that James was a smart kid and that he had to be educated. They could stay and work at the family farm, but James was a really smart kid and he needed to be educated. So they pooled their money and they got together $17
nice
to send him to school.
That's a pack of smokes in New York.
Yeah, right. So
That's less than a pack of smokes in Las Vegas.
James went to the Geauga Seminary. At least that's the pronunciation that I have found
Okay.
for this place. Because he kind of wanted to be a minister before anything. But turns out like his interests were in all of the studies in history and mathematics and in science. He greatly respected mathematics and science above most things.
He walked around in robes and he had like a T-square and a ruler and he was always measuring things. And
It would be really
carrying
nice
around
if we
a
could have a
stack of-
president who felt that now.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, yeah. So he was baptized there, and he had kind of a spiritual awakening there, where he sort of realized his morals there. That's where he got his, like, ardent abolitionist sort of views from. He got it there. But after he could kind of learn nothing else there, he went over to the Western Reserve Eclectic Institute, which was later named Hiram College in Hiram, Ohio. And he was continuing...
So we could learn
his
about
studies there.
super religion.
Well, no, about the sciences of the time and mathematics and things like that.
Oh, I thought they were like, you thought you knew everything about Jesus? Throw that out the window. Here's where the real education begins. And there's like all these contraptions and science and like a team.
And Jesus skateboarding.
Yeah, there's like a guy who's like good at like tech stuff and he's welding. He pulls back his mask. There's sparks shooting everywhere. Tough guy, the chick, the whole crew.
Oy vey.
Well, he was an ardent reader. He read all these great literary works during this time. He also met his wife there, but we'll come back to that.
The chick.
By the way, as he was going to school, he was working as a janitor and a teacher's assistant in the carpentry classes.
TA.
And a lot of people, he worked a full-time job and was a full-time student. And a lot of people said, like, how does he do it? Like, he just has the capacity for hard work.
He had a twin. Yeah. There's
Danny
two.
DeVito.
Yeah. He had a Danny DeVito. Also a Christian Bale. And
Yeah, I get
yeah,
the
no, Prestige.
yeah.
So by the time he was 23, he was a full-time teacher also at the institute that he was studying at. They made him a teacher there.
Nice.
And during this time, he was also accepted into Williams College in Massachusetts to continue his studies as well.
So, what was he a teacher of? Because I'm assuming majoring in barefoot farming is not a thing.
No, in this time, you would be a teacher of multiple things. So he was probably a teacher of science and mathematics during this time.
Okay.
And dance.
Yeah, interpretive dance.
Yeah.
Underwater basket weaving.
Yeah.
Is he the one that did the safety dance?
Like at Evergreen.
He did the unsafety dance. It was very dangerous. It involved hot coals and like, I don't know, maybe like spikes.
Those spikes were electrified too. So
Which wouldn't be a big deal if you weren't juggling all those knives.
So after studying at Williams College, he graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and he returned back to the institute where he'd come from, and with that fancy degree, they straight up made him president of the school at age 26.
There's
he was
so
president
many...
of the school. No, this is a testament to just how dedicated this man is.
So now he's able to drink.
So, and also...
It's 26. What have you done with your life?
Video games weren't
Got
a thing
married.
yet.
Yep. No such thing as TV or the internet.
Yeah. And also, so many people must have presented him, you know, that are just like, I wish I had what you had. He's like, I didn't have anything. I did it on
That's
my
pretty
own.
much exactly what happened, yeah. In 1861, he passed the bar of Ohio and became a lawyer.
Fuck,
he had
dude.
all of that, like the dude was a dynamo.
I can't make fun of this guy. Like, this is somebody I
He
should
was
be
a great man.
looking up
Oh, I
to.
can.
Like,
He was a great man.
Nerd.
I mean, fair enough.
There's plenty of other people in this story to make fun of. James Garfield is not
Seems
the
like
one.
a sweet man.
He was a great man.
Nerd is
He's just a really nice guy who's good at everything.
Nerd
Yeah.
is the meanest and only mean thing I can think to say about this man.
Yeah.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of, like, back in elementary school, how, like, the popular kid was the one who, like, worked the hardest and was, like, the fastest runner.
Yeah.
This is
That's
the guy.
Garfield. That's James Garfield.
I bet you he wasn't the fastest runner though. At that size, he'd probably have to cord down pretty far at his size to be the fastest.
He was a kid.
I think when he was a
I
kid,
would-
though, with
I
giant
am literally
strides.
his height and weight as an adult, and I was the fastest runner.
There you
Not
go.
anymore.
No,
Chris
Actually,
is-
I can run really fast.
Chris is on
I
the
know.
same level as
Well,
James Garfield
Chris
right now.
on his
I
dating
can run
profile
as fast as James Garfield.
when he was single, he had that he was really fast and he was almost as tall as Chewbacca. And he
I
is
wish it
now
was. I
married.
could run as fast as James Garfield.
It would have been
just
better.
as fast. So it was at the institute that he met his soon-to-be wife, Lucretia Rudolph. Now they had a really awkward courtship. Within my research, Lucretia was incredibly shy. Incredibly shy.
And can we call her Luke for short?
No. She had a hard time expressing herself, expressing her love towards James, and James also had a hard time as well.
Oh, he was shy.
Yeah, so they got together like in a very quaint and kind of cute way. But their letters for a long time were always kind of short and a little cold between each other. It wasn't really until James had an affair with another woman.
That's how you do it.
And he admitted it to Lucretia, and she was mad about it. But she forgave him, and he broke it off immediately, to his credit, and he told it to her face. Ever since this thing, it's like they fell in love with each other, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't make up behind a waterfall in this crater type lake that
He
you have
chased
to
her
that you're only
through the
able to get to
Yeah.
underneath the submarine. No, that's the
Also, despite his affair, the only person who was never like really aware of any of this was the other woman, because his affair, he was like, I stared at another woman, I gazed at her longingly, and I am sorry for that. And she's like, I'm gonna have trouble forgiving you.
No, I'm sure they banged.
Nice.
Nice.
Because you know he's hanging down.
Well, Garfield wasn't like around his home a lot during this time.
He's around a lot of other homes.
Lucretia
Ladies' homes.
was pregnant several times. Her first child, they actually lost, and
Where'd it go?
was
Lost it in a dice game.
and it really affected their relationship, and it really affected them as people. And so they lost 2 children. They had 7 children, 5 that would make it past infancy.
He was a gambling man.
Jesus. But every time it fucked him up. Like, it buried them to have this happen.
Financially.
But when he saw Lucretia go through these hardships and stuff, it really made him fall in love with her all over again, because what he didn't like about her was how shy she was and how non-gregarious she was, because he's very gregarious.
right.
But what he ended up admiring about her was just how silently strong she could be, how she could take a really bad situation and move on with her life.
Sure.
And that's why he fell in love with her all over again, and they were inseparable after that.
And also, whenever she cried, he got so turned on, and he never
No.
told anyone about it. It's a weird thing to be into, but he was into it big time.
It was like a romantic comedy with the acts and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And he's constantly manipulating her into tears so he can just get rock hard again and again.
Yeah.
And it's his thing, and I'm not here to knock anyone's kinks. But
I'm just surprised that he's not Catholic, because it sounds like he's chock full of Catholic guilt, and that's what turns him on.
oh, he's
don't have to be
Protestant.
Catholic to be guilty.
He was progressive. He has liberal guilt
Yeah.
Yes. For the time.
for the time.
Yeah. Now, in April of 1861, with the outbreak of the Civil War, Garfield joined the Union Army and received his commission as a colonel in the 42nd Ohio Infantry Regiment.
Woo!
Right?
Did he meet
Number
Lincoln?
42.
Did he meet any of the guys, the big guys like Lincoln or
Yes.
Jefferson Davies, maybe eye to eye in a fist fight?
So let me tell you about this. Let me tell you.
Lincoln signed his book like in Last Crusade.
Yeah.
I was thinking the yearbook.
I feel like
Do
that.
not dissect that. 'Cause I Lincoln did
I'm not.
Hitler.
It's like the opposite guy.
He became a war hero for his actions in the war and was actually made a brigadier general. But one of his more famous he was involved during the whole war, but one of his more famous battles is he had a small little group of men, and he knew that he was coming across a larger group of soldiers from the south.
They were physically larger.
No, there were more of them.
Oh, okay, got
Am I
it.
making sense to you now?
I thought he had smaller men, and then the other guys were larger men, but
I
they're
understood.
equal
Yeah,
amounts.
I understoed the joke.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't a joke. It was a legitimate question. I don't know how they did things back then.
So anyway, he knew that the southern forces were larger than his smaller force. So what he did is he broke up his smaller force into 3 pieces. And he made the first one at the head attack. And the southern force was fighting them. They're like, okay, we're actually gaining ground. Great. And then he made the other one attack later on a different flank.
The shaft.
And then they were like, oh shit. And then they're like kind of thrown into disarray. Oh, there's more here. And then he made the other wing attack on the other flank. And now all of a sudden, now the Confederates think that there are 3 armies attacking them at the same time. Which, if that's true, they don't stand a chance. So they instinctively retreated, and they won, even though they sustained minimal losses, and it was just with Garfield's very small force that he had under his command.
It was the Led Zeppelin stuff your pants situation.
Exactly. It was a fake out. It was a fake out.
It was almost as if the army was being commanded by 2 Garfields.
This reminds me.
What do you mean by that?
I'm saying there was 2 of them the whole time.
Oh yeah,
No
you
one
did
could
say you did bring that up, the twin
Jesus.
thing.
Yeah,
Christ.
he had a twin, and they were both operating at different times, so it always seemed like one
One
exceptional
of them was
man.
inept, and one of them was
This
really
was
good.
the call.
No, they were both really good. That's the thing. But they were both operating on full cylinders, passing the buck, back and forth, getting things done. Nobody knew.
None
It's
of this is
because
true.
Okay, well,
None of this is
welcome
true.
to the speculation podcast.
I was imagining this battle was like the end of Three Amigos.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's amigos everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They should have called that movie A Bunch of Amigos.
shitload of amigos.
Yeah, it would have spoiled the ending.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They shouldn't have called it that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was made a general. So yeah, he has that under his belt. He is now General James A. Garfield.
Badass.
Yeah. So while serving...
Wait, General James Garfield, attorney at law.
Yeah?
Bump, bump.
That sounds like a show.
Well,
Cool.
there was
Bump.
also President
That's good.
Abraham Lincoln, attorney at law.
Well, it's going to be President James Garfield. President
General Garfield.
James
attorney at law.
Garfield.
Why aren't they using all their honorifics at once?
But he's also was the
They're
president
not
of
interested in doing
He was
that.
also president of a college, so it would be President General President James Garfield, attorney at law.
President, General, President, Professor
Oh, yeah.
Remember,
Doctor.
Was he a doctor?
Doctor.
Well, he
Yeah.
probably had a doctorate.
Yeah.
He may have, yeah.
So add that in there.
Yeah.
That's how we should do it.
He had
I feel
all
like,
the acumen.
I feel like we
Yeah.
always just go with the top one, and once you're president, fuck
No.
general. You
No,
know? I'm
he-
like, no, I was a
No,
general.
Game of Thrones that shit. Have all of them in there.
Well, it's
Breaker of Chains and the rest.
When somebody's president, you call him president forever. Like, president, you're still like, thank you, Mr. President, to fucking Bill Clinton and shit. Can't you just do that with general and doctor and all that shit?
Well-
Just add them all together.
that's not true. Not to our current administration. It's still Mister.
And fuck that guy. But,
While serving, Garfield was approached by the leading members of the Republican Party to run for Ohio's new 19th district.
and if you imagine the cat, it's totally normal.
up until then, it had only been cats who were leading that district.
Yeah, the fat cats in Washington. Like
Yeah.
Garfield.
Yeah. Now, James never campaigned, not once, or made any speeches to try to get elected, because that's what Lincoln had done. Lincoln had always said, you never speak to yourself to get elected.
I thought you were going to say, because that's what assholes do.
No, that's what good dudes do.
They just hang back and just let the votes roll in.
Back then, that's what they used to do.
Hang back,
That's what they
hang
used to
on.
do. That's what
would-
they used to do.
They didn't have the modern, like, you can't give a State of the Union to who?
Oh no, it's apples and oranges. To compare
That's
the
my
Gilded
point.
Age of politics to now, apples and oranges completely
Without
different.
television or radio, like, who are you giving speeches to?
Well, that and different people can vote. There's only a certain majority of people that can vote during this time. Politics are insanely different during the Gilded Age.
You mean only white men could vote?
Yes.
That were landowners.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Garfield, his biggest thing was black suffrage. Now, he was not a suffragette, not at all. Yeah.
They're like, we need to free black men
Progressive for the
and
time.
enslave
Yes.
white women. We need to enslave white women more.
Yeah, we
No,
we
keep
need
them where they're at.
we need
they're
to-
already there.
abolish slavery, but then take the women that were abolished and put them at the level of slavery, not slavery, that our women are currently in, and have that going on. And
Indentured
then,
servants is what you
yeah.
need.
So we got the baby factories and the money makers, and that's how things are going. Anyway,
Whoa.
Well, Garfield was he wanted what eventually happened in the 1960s. He wanted full equality, full rights. He even said, like, it's not enough to have a man be able to vote. True equality is not from voting. True equality is from being a true contributing citizen of the country.
I was just gonna say that he was
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, well,
He was 100 years ahead of his time.
he wanted everyone to be on LSD and having a free love sexual experience with multiple partners that are all experiencing things simultaneously. That was part of his
Oh,
platform.
he would have loved Manson up until the murders.
Yeah, right?
Now, Garfield would use his time as a congressman to fight corruption and speak passionately about black suffrage. By all accounts, Garfield had a gift for public speaking, if not a little long-winded. Like
and-
what they say about Obama. He's really great about speaking, but he's a little long-winded. That's exactly what Garfield
He's
is.
so good
I'm
at
like
public
that.
speaking amongst his other gifts that he just goes on too long at speaking well.
Yeah.
Oh, wah. Poor
He's
him.
so good at speaking, he just keeps doing it.
Yeah.
And let me reiterate, he was incredibly educated. He was an imposing figure, but he was also witty, gregarious, and all of that really put his political rivals at ease.
Good at checkers, both Chinese and domestic.
Now, the other man important to this story was the opposite of James Garfield.
tell us about this Joker.
Odie.
And his name
I don't like him.
was Charles Guiteau.
French. Ugh.
And he was born fourth of 6 children on September 8th, 1841, into a chaotic home life. His mother was institutionalized and died while he was still young, probably institutionalized with schizophrenia. His father was a bit of a cult leader type of guy, led all these people in his own Christian sect. He was predisposed to believing bizarre Christian faith type of things.
Just a regular old Joel Osteen.
Yeah, pretty much, honestly. Yeah, only more mentally ill than Joel Osteen, unfortunately. He actually received an inheritance to attend college from his grandfather, but failed all the entrance exams. And even when he had, like, letters of recommendation, he just kept failing all the exams. He actually wasn't very smart. I mean, with everything we're going to talk about, Charles Guiteau failed at everything he tried at.
I can't.
And we're going to continue on this, but he failed at everything.
He really is the exact opposite of Garfield.
He's not. Yeah, he's not smart. He's not good looking. He's not anything that Garfield is.
He's Frank Grimes, Simpsons reference.
There you go.
We haven't had one.
Well,
I can't help.
Episode.
I can't help but feel just a little bit bad for this guy. Like,
I feel not bad for this guy at all. I feel nothing.
Currently knowing this much.
Okay, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
I feel bad for this kid.
Okay, I feel bad for the kid.
For the child that was... What the fuck was his name? Odie?
Charles Guiteau.
Right, Charles Guiteau.
You guys you're still calling him Odie.
Guiteau even joined a free love commune. Because in this time, it's actually not well understood, but there's like waves of conservatism and liberalism that always come with counterculture. And the late 1800s were no different. There was a counterculture movement in the late 1800s. And one of these places, I think it was called Oneida. It was a place run by this man named...
Oneida bang a bunch of people.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what any of those... There's one guy who's like, it's about, like, all these other things, but also about how I need to, like, punch way above my weight sexually speaking, so if you guys could just hook me up with that, that'd be great.
I like the concept of granola.
But I don't like granola in practice at all.
Well, what I was going to say, though, is that there was this guy, his last name was Noyes. N-O-Y-E-S.
I love him already.
He was the head of this free love commune.
Well, he was the head along with somebody else named Funk, and they would bring the noise and the funk together, and they would give the daily rantings.
Well,
Daily rantings.
I mean, if it's a cult.
Guiteau was drawn to Noyes because Noyes was sort of a...
I'm so sorry.
Because Noyes was loud.
Because Noyes was preaching all of this, like, new age type of Christian belief. And it was, like, communal, and it was free love. And Guiteau wanted himself some free love. But guess what else he failed at? Being in a free love commune. So the women...
What, his dick don't work?
Well, we'll actually get to his dick. This is actually strange. But we'll get to that.
Tell me about his dick.
The women of the commune actually had a nickname for Guiteau. They actually called him Charles Get Out.
Oh!
Damn. Got him.
Because he was a creep.
He was the guy leering in the corner, just about to jerk it.
He's that guy in the gangbang porn who's in the corner jacking off.
Oh, God.
He was just a weirdo. No one wanted to be around him. He was a strange guy.
Like, the Joker from the Joker movie.
God damn it.
And he had people in his corner. Like, he had a sister that really loved him.
You're going to say that she was very creeped out by him.
No, she really did care for him. But his older brother and his sister that did care for him, both of them said that he was greatly disturbed and that Charles should be institutionalized. He was sick, and actually he was institutionalized by his older brother, but he broke out, and he wasn't ever found by them.
It's one thing that he never failed at, is breaking out of the institution. Good for him.
So he's a super crazy, creepy-ass dude who has a really good relationship with his sister. He should be played by Joaquin Phoenix, that's all I'm saying.
Gladiator reference.
It is.
Nice. All right.
Okay.
All of that's wrong historically, but that's cool. We'll move on.
You just said he was creepy.
He's creepy, yes.
Look,
I don't know if that relates to
the movie was historically
said,
inaccurate for a number of reasons that we can go into.
One day we will actually talk about Commodus, but not today.
Look.
Not a bad guy. Not a bad guy.
No.
God damn it.
No, not true.
What I'm
a bad
getting,
guy.
based off of what Jerry just described, is that essentially what happened to Gateau was the music video for Suicidal Tendencies institutionalized.
Yeah.
He just wanted a Pepsi, and then at the very end, his buddies come and bust him out.
Is that how that
maybe the
video goes?
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean,
and by buddies, I mean the voices in his head.
The voices in his head. Yeah, God did.
So go watch that music video, guys.
They've already seen it. I hope.
I haven't.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't like Suicidal Tendencies. You've said that multiple times.
I don't like him normal or the band.
Yeah. So Gateau was certainly mentally ill and totally delusional. After being kicked out of the commune, he traveled around a lot. He never paid his boarding bill in any place he stayed. So what he would do is he would like go to hotels, and he would go to like really prestigious hotels, like really big, awesome hotels, and then just not pay his bill and then just move on. And like he'd run up all these bills and then just never pay them.
How do you do that? I want to do that.
Cards back then.
No credit cards. There's no way to track it back then. So like he would just keep going and going and going, and that's how he kind of traveled around.
I'd do that.
Nowadays, you have to put a credit card on file, so...
Yeah, I mean, that would make tour managing so much easier. Just go to a Hojo and be like, yeah, last name Gateau.
Yeah.
Put it on my room.
He would borrow money from anyone and everyone he knew, no matter if he had only met them briefly. Like, he would meet you briefly in a party, and then months and months later, he would show up at your house, and you'd be like, can I borrow $20 from you? And you'd be like, why? And he'd be like, because I want to use money. People would just give him the money, and he would have no qualms with just never paying them back.
He just sounds like a regular old L. Ron Hubbard at this point.
Yeah, he's a douchebag.
Fuck this guy.
This guy sucks.
Yeah. And he would spend his money on, like, expensive suits and shit to make himself look really, like, astute and presentable.
I was hoping you'd say expensive hats. So his clothing was very drab.
Probably hats.
And his hats were very elegant.
He went down to the hat store
and
and bought
audacious.
himself a hat.
Yeah, no, this is definitely behavior of a complete and utter failure.
Oh, he is.
Like,
he is.
Somebody who is just who just squanders away all the chances and all their money, but still is like, oh, I come from a special kind of ilk.
we all know a Gateau.
Which he didn't, though.
We all if you don't know a Gateau, hopefully you're fortunate enough, but there's a chance you might be a Gateau. And I hope that you're not, because I knew a guy who said that he worked for the electric company, and then when he went to work, he would just get in his car and drive around for 8 hours, and then he'd show up and be like, I had a hard day at work, and then we saw him walking around the mall one day, and we were like, dude, you're a liar, and he was like, well, I was on my break, and it turned out that he was completely full of shit. So I knew
that his lie was, I work for the electric company.
Yeah, and it was crazy.
Well,
I hope he's listening to the podcast, and he knows.
I hope he's a fan, and he's listened to it, and he's like, oh no, I'm that guy.
Well,
Spooked him.
In 1880, Gateau was aboard the Stonington steamship as it collided with another ship, and the disaster killed like 30 people, mainly women and children, actually. But Gateau survived, and he took it as a sign from God
that he's super cool.
That he was meant for something great.
I like to think that the reason it was like that George Costanza thing, where the place is on fire, and he's like just pushing women
Shoving
and
the old
children.
lady out of the way.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm meant for something great.
He took it as he needs to become a traveling preacher.
And he failed at that too.
He went from town to town, again, not paying his boarding bills. And he wrote these, like, playbills and, like, these, like, little tiny, like, novella books that he would read from town to town. And there were these bizarre Protestant teachings. And anytime people would show up, which was rare, it was always so bizarre that they were like, this guy's full of shit. You know?
And all of his playbills had him in a turtleneck under a spotlight reaching towards the heavens.
I'm really hoping that inside those playbills it's written like Charlie Kelly from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
like, I can almost guarantee it.
Me money now, please.
God said, me money.
Now, his book that he self-published was
called blogger. I get it.
Yeah, that he self-published. It was called The Truth, but it was highly plagiarized from Noise's book, like that was about like this like free love, like you know, type of, this sort of Christian Protestant type of ideal, but it was totally plagiarized from Noyes' work.
This guy would have a YouTube channel right now.
Oh,
where there was no lighting, just a camera on him, and he's like sitting in front of his computer being like...
No, absolutely not. He would be the guy sitting in the front seat of his pickup truck.
Yes, he's that guy. Yes, you're absolutely
Zach, you're right.
Guiteau thought of himself as like a New World Apostle Paul, of preaching a new Christianity throughout the world. Again, like, Guiteau's siblings the whole time are like, this guy has to be put away. Seriously.
Honey, no.
Yeah, through his whole life, really. His father went so far as to say that he was possessed by Satan.
Ooh.
Cool.
That's kind of cool, but...
Yeah,
But the way his father viewed Satan...
Yeah.
His father didn't view Satan the way I view Satan.
Right.
With love and admiration.
Yes, exactly.
My son's possessed by Satan. Look at this sweet fucking chord progression. In
a strange turn of events, Guiteau married a librarian named Annie Bunn, and she really had no idea about his life and how he ran it.
Because that's how getting married worked back then.
But he was insanely abusive towards her.
Aww.
Physically, emotionally, sexually, all the ways that you can be abusive to somebody.
I thought you were going to say he was insanely cool to her.
No.
So that was a turn.
She left after Guiteau openly just visited a prostitute. And my thought is, this is how it's recorded, but my thought is that she walked in on him with a prostitute, and he just didn't care.
I'd like to think that he was like, "Dear, put dinner on. I have a very important person coming over to eat dinner with us. Honey, this is the prostitute I'll be sleeping with later."
Yeah. Well,
care to watch?
Not far off.
And then
in the bedroom with this woman.
And then he does what only somebody who's a complete psychopath would do, and he tucks his handkerchief, like his napkin, down the front of his shirt, because that's only what crazy people do.
I mean,
I would rather have food all over my shirt than stuff it down the top.
Clearly, you've never been to Lobster Fest at the Red Lobster.
See, that's what I was going to say.
A bib is different. A bib is different than tucking it in like you're fucking
tucking in the
Amadeus
napkin.
Mozart, and it's like some kind of kerchief.
Amadeus Mozart.
Hey man, I would hang out with Amadeus.
By the way, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Same diff.
Oh, he said he's
just
fine.
want to make sure.
Yeah.
We're going to do an episode on Mozart at some point.
We should also do one about Falco.
And every guy who's ever did the top tuck.
Switching gears a little bit, on June 2nd, 1880, the Republican National Convention convened. Now, the Republican Party at this time was split into two factions. The establishment were called the Stalwarts, and the more radical wing of the Republicans, they were called the Half-Breeds.
Oh, I like those guys already.
So Garfield was a member of the Half-Breeds. Now,
it's like Harry Potter.
Yeah. Woo! So, the one who led the Stalwarts was a man named Roscoe Conkling.
Oh, jeez.
That is a name.
It's a name.
And he was an ogre, clearly.
Well, he was a very vain man. He dressed in these very nice suits. He was a senator from New York, and he dressed in all these really nice suits, and he had this hair that had this curly Q in the front of it,
like Superman.
Like he had
total night elf, dude.
Yeah, he was drow for sure.
Now, the difference between the Stalwarts and the Half-Breeds is that the Stalwarts wanted to continue the highly controversial and corrupt spoils system. And what the spoils system is, you could pick anybody to be a part of your cabinet, to be appointed to any sort of public position, regardless of whatever experience that you had had.
So right now.
Yes, but you could appoint anyone, and then there was a patronage system on top of this. You would get a cut of what your friends who you had appointed, you get what they get. Like a cut off the top of what they get.
So it's a pyramid scheme?
It's a pyramid scheme
wow.
in a weird way. So it's this elected official
marketing.
Yeah, it's this elected official top-down sort of system. Now, Conkling had this history with the previous president, Rutherford B. Hayes, who was a Republican, but he wasn't a stalwart nor a half-breed. In fact, he was actually trying to heal the divide between the South and the North by appointing Democrats, Southern Democrats, to these lucrative positions. And we're going to get into how lucrative some of these positions were going to be during this time.
That is an opening crawl of a Star Wars movie.
No, it is. And Hayes' presidency was ruined by Conkling because Conkling stopped him at every turn, making Conkling the most powerful man in the country up until this point.
So, this was back in the day where the whole role of Democrats and Republicans, their roles were kind of opposites from current days, correct?
Yes, for a lot of different reasons now.
The way we view Democrat and Republican today is drastically different from the way that we're talking about now.
100% different.
Like, almost just assume they have different names entirely.
So, the stalwarts were also not just for the spoils system and the patronage system that we already had going on, but they also wanted to punish the South after the Civil War. They wanted to put all of these things on the South to cripple them, or even further.
Worked for Germany and Austria.
Whereas the half-breeds, they wanted to placate them, and they wanted to draw them back into the Union. And there was a big argument at the time. And again, Hayes was trying to bridge that divide and had such a problem with Conkling during his presidency that he did not seek a second term.
He needed to conkle harder.
So that's why we're at this national convention in 1880 to pick another Republican presidential candidate.
And this is obviously before term limits.
Yes. Yes, because the stalwarts of the time, they supported Grant, who had already served 2 terms. They were looking for him to serve a non-consecutive 3rd term. The half-breeds were led by a man named James G. Blaine out of Maine. That was the half-breed side of the conversation. Now, Garfield did go to the convention with another candidate in mind, and that candidate was John Sherman, brother to William Tecumseh Sherman, the famed Civil War general.
Who became a tank.
Yeah.
He wished upon a star and became a tank and won the war. If my history is correct.
Yeah.
No, that's accurate.
Now, a quick thing to mention is that one of Roscoe Conkling's confidants, one of his closest confidants, he had one of his friends have control over the New York Customs House, which is the most lucrative civil servant job that you could have at the time. And his name was future President Chester A. Arthur. And he was best buddies with Roscoe Conkling. And we're going to talk about how that all worked in another episode. But it's important to know now in this convention aspect. So, the stalwarts are with Ulysses S. Grant, right? They want him to serve a 3rd term.
Gotcha.
The half-breeds, led by James G. Blaine, wanted James G. Blaine. Now, James Garfield, because John Sherman had helped him get elected again, he was there to support John Sherman. Now, Garfield had nothing prepared to say on John Sherman's behalf, although James Garfield was a gifted orator. He really didn't need to prepare.
But, I mean, he was confused by all the men in the room. All these new names.
So, at one point during the convention, Roscoe Conkling, it was time for his point to speak, because he was going to introduce his candidate. And so he strutted up down there.
Got his little curl ready.
And he had his little curl on his head. And instead of walking up to the stage, he jumped on top of the press table.
Oh, I thought he was going to fall.
No, he jumped on top of the press table. And what he said was this. And when asked what state he hails from, our sole reply shall be, he hails from Appomattox and its famous apple tree. And everyone started cheering. And through cheers he said, New York is for Ulysses S. Grant, never defeated in peace or in war. His name is the most illustrious born by living men. And the crowd went wild. And the crowds, they clapped and cheered for so long that Roscoe Conkling reached into his pocket and he pulled out a lemon. And he started sucking it while they were finishing up cheering.
Why?
There's no such thing as candy back then. It's a lemon.
That's the closest thing they had to candy?
I guess so.
He's like, you know what I could use right now is chewing on a lemon.
There's
Sweet
nothing
lemon.
more old-timey than he jumped on the table, he gave a rousing speech, then he bit on a lemon.
Apparently when I was a kid, I was big into chewing on lemons.
Yeah.
Dude, to this day, I still chew on lemons. But
It's not a bad thing.
But what I do now, I add a little bit of sugar.
Ooh.
I like to squeeze lemon into my water.
When life
I
gives you
do that
lemons, you do a variety of things with it, apparently.
My wife has this like lemon squeezer that leaves nothing to the imagination, and it just squeezes all of that lemon juice
Leaves nothing to the imagination.
right into my water.
And when you
it's-
do it, you can see the user's genitals through their pants perfectly clear.
yeah,
Leaves nothing to the imagination.
even if you're a woman,
You can see
like
the-
you can be wearing cargo shorts as a woman, and
You'll
you will see a full camel toe.
Yeah. It's a bizarre contraption.
So after that rousing speech, it looked pretty clear that Grant was going to get a third term. But the next speech in line to go that night was from Garfield
Oh,
in support of John Sherman. Now, again, he didn't really know what he was going to say on John Sherman's behalf. So what he did is he stood up there and he talked about the destiny of the Republic and where we're going as a people. Before he could say, we want John Sherman, he said, so with all this considered, and again, the whole crowd was brought down to silence during his speech. So who do we want for the presidency? Somebody yelled out in the crowd, we want Garfield. And he's like, no,
That
we want
man's-
John Sherman. And he got cheers and he left. But it wouldn't go the way he wanted it.
I can't help but think that Garfield was, waking up from a nap. He's just, hair's all tousled and everything, and just because he's such a prodigy, what the fuck, what am I doing? Oh, that's right, I'm making the speech. I'm just gonna wing it. And now people are chanting his name.
Yeah. And
You're
he's
actually
like,
not far off, because there was actually a senator that didn't have a place to stay during this time, and he knocked on the place that Garfield was staying, like the door that Garfield was staying, and he was like, can I stay with you? And Garfield, being the ubermensch that he is, was like, yeah, dude. But it was a single bed that he had.
We're gonna do tops and tails.
They both slept on a single bed, and
Ass to
Garfield
ass.
was like, I didn't get a wink of sleep that night.
well, I mean, but they're not gonna spoon.
you mean?
Oh, they probably did. Sleeping in the same bed with an acquaintance or with a friend wasn't like how we think.
We're talking
about
about
it now.
male on male platonic cuddling.
Yeah, that was not weird back then.
We need to bring that back, guys, is what
We
we're
should.
saying.
We should.
Do we?
I think it's fine. Yeah,
totally.
it's fine.
I'm thinking I'm
it's
talking
not that
about
bad.
I cuddle with one person in my house. It is my dog Fritz, and that is the only person. My wife says, you can cuddle me, but then as soon as I do, she's like, you smell, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, the dog doesn't care. If anything, he likes it when I smell. And he does.
Well, that's why you
Never
smell
trust
like
a
cold
person
cuts.
with a sensitive sniffer. I have said that for years.
So deadlock ballot after deadlock ballot, the states slowly started to weirdly flip to Garfield. And as they started to just come in torrents, Garfield all of a sudden was like, hey, I protest. I am not a candidate.
He's like, I'm not even running.
I'm not running. I'm not a candidate for the presidency. I do not want to be president, you guys. I don't want to be president. You cannot just stand up here and vote for me.
And they're like, he said he wants to be president.
Pretty much.
I think
they
not-
just ignored him.
That's
be
what makes
honest-
us so lovable.
Yeah.
To be honest, not wanting to be president is a huge bonus for me.
It is.
In being a president.
Yeah. And I think that's how they took it, too. So they voted for him anyway. Much to Conkling's chagrin. Like, Conkling's like, well, that wasn't one of my stalwarts.
He's like, get me one of my shame lemons, not one of my victory lemons.
Oh, it's those gross lemons.
So
It's
yeah,
all rotten.
The bitter ones.
So yeah, Garfield did get the nomination, and they did vote. So it was seen as a compromise, and maybe even an appeasement, that they elected Chester Arthur to be Garfield's running mate and vice presidential candidate. A stalwart on one side, a half-breed on another. You got yourself a Republican winning ticket, right?
Match made in heaven.
Exactly. So it unified the Republican Party as much as they could.
Right.
You know, Conkling chose to pick his battle for a different day.
He conkled off into the sunset.
I don't even know what you're doing there, but
What do you have in your head when you say conkle?
in a van down by the river.
It's kind of like they're rolling down a hill, but surrounded by empty tin cans the whole way.
You see,
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
I hear conkling as if somebody trying to scurry away but are on two peg legs
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
with change in their pocket.
I feel like
Oh, yeah. No, there's definitely... There's
there's a bit of scampering and scurrying.
Yeah.
I think there's like constantly hitting your head on a rock.
Oh, okay.
Conkling. We haven't seen the last of Roscoe Conkling just yet either. The thing about Arthur is that a vice president at this time didn't have a lot of power or even responsibility. So when people were voting in presidential elections during this time, they weren't even really looking at the presidential candidate, because the only reason why anyone would ever be assassinated like Abraham Lincoln is because maybe some wartime tiffs. Right? But otherwise, the thing about our country, what they considered at that time, is that if you didn't like the guy, you wouldn't assassinate him, you would vote him out, or the ruling party. So, they didn't care that Arthur was in there, even though they didn't like him, even though that they thought that he was sort of inept in the ways of politics and had always sort of been a fat cat. He was sort of fine.
Back in those days, we weren't electing presidents who were there in their fucking 70s.
No.
So we didn't have to, even like John McCain back in the day with Sarah Palin, you were like, well, John McCain for a Republican's not so bad, but
No.
we don't want Sarah Palin to be... Like, now it's like all of them are so fucking old
Yeah.
that they're gonna die any fucking minute. Like, Donald Trump, you know.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing keeping him alive is that sweet, sweet fucking presidential, medical care.
Yep.
That guy is on his fucking last legs.
No, there's not a single candidate in the current election
They're painting his
that calls
fucking...
dinner not supper. They all call it supper, and they all eat it at 4:30 p.m.
and it's all soup.
It's
And when
all,
they
it's
bring bags to
lukewarm.
the grocery store, they call them sacks.
Yeah, oh,
That is
jeez.
a thing old people do. I fucking promise you.
And they're absolutely asleep by 9 o'clock. So after a fairly close election between Garfield and the Democratic candidate, Winfield Hancock, Garfield won with 214 electoral votes to Hancock's 151. Now, during this time, you needed 185 to win.
I want to know more about Winfield Hancock.
That's a story for a different day.
I like that he was like, I don't want to be president. They're like, too bad.
Yeah.
Winfield Hancock was like, there's nothing I wanted more than to be president.
He was most assuredly a racist piece of shit.
Oh, well.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah. As president, Garfield had to deal with a lot of things. And he dealt with so many things, like British intervention into Hawaii. He did not support that. He didn't support any colonization, anything like that. He was, again, for black suffrage. He did a lot of things for certain appointments that we kind of take for granted today that really show their face later on. But the biggest thing that he had to deal with was that troublesome New York Customs Office.
Ugh.
So what he did is he took out the guy that was there, and he wanted to put in his half-breed guy, because he wanted that guy to have more morals.
Political
and not,
half-breed, just to be clear.
of the party, yes.
Yeah.
Party is called half-breed.
Yeah, so he wanted him to be in there because they were more morally astute to the position than the stalwarts were.
Right.
Now, Roscoe Conkling didn't like this one bit. Why? Because he's making a bunch of money off of it.
Right.
So he fought it tooth and nail, just like he fought Hayes. Except Garfield was not about to back down. So, Conkling, in his infinite wisdom, him and a different senator, they decided that they were going to have this grandiose political statement. And what they were going to do is they were going to resign. Knowing full well in their minds, the Senate would be like, oh, no. And then they would be reinstated.
Oh, they were going to do
the
I'm not going to do something crazy and just flip out.
So they both resigned. If it's going to be like this for the New York Customs House, then I, Roscoe Conkling, will resign.
That sounds great.
That's awesome.
And so he did. And so all of the people of the Senate were like,
cool.
Oh, he's gone. So he's like, so you're going to reinstate me? And they're like,
no.
Nah.
You already said, bye, Felicia.
And he's like, wait a minute. I thought you guys loved me. And they're like, actually, we don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Turns out nobody
you're an
likes you.
asshole.
You're stupid. Your curly hair and your lemons
So
are way over the line.
So Conkling ran again to try to get his seat back. And didn't get it. It was not voted in.
Is this the end of Roscoe Conkling's political career? Damn it.
We have not seen the end of Roscoe
Never trust
Conkling
a curly-haired
just yet.
man. I always say that.
Yeah.
Now, this sort of
If
happens.
you have curly hair, straighten it. That's all I'm saying.
No.
Whoa,
Whoa.
He didn't have curly hair. He just had this waxed curly Q.
So he chooses the curly hair?
Oh, it was a part of the style to have this greased curly Q on your forehead.
It was actually a Sharpie.
Yeah, it was this little strand of hair, or this like little clump of hair that he had greased.
Like Superman?
Like
Yeah,
Superman.
that's what I was saying
He said that
earlier.
Yeah,
I don't trust Superman.
See, I'm just thinking
Nobody
of Charlie
does.
Brown. It's little...
Jerry
Well, that's the
Seinfeld
only
does.
hair on his head.
Yeah.
He's
Well-
got just the one.
Well, Garfield was like, well, that's out of the way.
Yeah.
So, but something during this time, and I don't know if this still happens to this day, but in this time, there were a lot of people, because the spoil system's still in full swing, there's a lot of people that would come to the White House when a new president was elected to seek a cabinet position.
Real quick, did we talk about what the spoil system was?
We did, yes.
Okay.
It's when you know someone, and if you felt that they had helped you get elected, that you would in turn give
You
them
would get money off of it.
a cabinet position.
No
or
matter what,
a lucrative position.
No matter who you were, you could be, I don't know, general manager at a Burger King, and then want to be.
You could be ambassador to Paris.
Yeah.
It could be somebody's daughter who gets...
Institutionalized nepotism. Is what you're
Yes,
saying.
exactly.
Yes.
So there's all these people gathering around the White House looking for positions. And it really stressed Garfield out.
Sexual positions.
Because there were
I was going to say, who was
Nice.
trying to get doggy?
there were so many people
Reverse.
there looking
Anyway.
looking for positions. And actually, Garfield's trusted secretary, actually the youngest secretary, to have this position by this point, his name was Joseph Stanley Brown. He was given to Garfield by an explorer because the explorer wanted money to go on his expeditions, and
It's like, I'm my boy.
well, Garfield was like, I don't have a secretary. I don't know when you're going to get that money. And the explorer was like, well, take my secretary. He's really great, and give me the money. So Garfield took the secretary and never let go of him. He was a very trusted secretary. He was very young, in his 20s. He was the youngest man to ever have this position. And he was insanely good. But he was the one in charge of wrangling all of these position seekers, right? And one of those position seekers was none other than our friend Charles Guiteau. Why?
This piece of shit.
This
Why?
is where it all comes around.
So you may be asking yourself, why did Charles Guiteau think that he was qualified to have a position in Garfield's cabinet?
Because you need a little bit of ebony with some ivory, you know? A little bit,
No.
A little yin and yang?
Wrong?
No?
No?
Fuck.
Because Guiteau had made one speech one time at a very small gathering in Garfield's defense. So he thought, he got it into his mind that he got Garfield elected. He even went to a party where Chester A. Arthur was present, and he weaseled his way in, and then walked up to Arthur and had this really awkward exchange where he's like, I got Garfield elected. I should be a part of your cabinet, and like gave Arthur a copy of his speech, and Arthur's like, okay,
weirdo.
all right, yeah. Everyone around in attendance was like,
be played
by Joaquin
dude.
Phoenix.
That's what I said. He's so Joaquin Phoenix.
So he was later chucked out of the party, but Arthur, he totally forgot about him after this. He was so inconsequential, but Guiteau was there every day that there was a line for cabinet positions. In the beginning, Guiteau, he wanted the consulship for Vienna, but he later changed his mind, and he wanted the consulship of Paris. He said he deserved the consulship of Paris because he helped get Garfield elected. He even walked up to Lucretia Garfield and said, I got your husband elected, And she was like, great, move on. This is during the inaugural parties.
That must have been so great back in those olden time inaugural parties where you could just show up. Mm-hmm. Show up,
hang
you got
out with the prez.
Put some goop in your hair, and you put yourself in your finest rags, and you slop your way down to the White House, and
Guiteau
slurp on some crawdads with the rest.
Guiteau was homeless by this point, and he looked it. Like, everyone said, like, this dude had a tattered suit, and he wasn't wearing shoes. He was wearing, like, these rubber flip-flops.
Oh,
he had a top hat.
I mean,
with the
he didn't
top
have a hat.
open, and a flower growing.
No, he
out.
had greasy-ass hair. He looked like a vagrant.
I know Tyler was on the same page.
I know. No, I know what you're talking
the
about.
cartoon hobo hat.
Yeah, like in Pinocchio.
He was riding the rails. Maybe, okay, he was.
He looked like even more of a scumbag than that.
Oh
He
my
had to
God.
be escorted out of most of these parties.
Rail yard
do you think
hobos were kicking him out of the rail yard.
Yeah, that wouldn't
Get out of
surprise
here,
me.
you're too shabby.
I really hope that he kept on getting confused that it was the line to the soup kitchen when it was just like these presidential parties.
Oh no, the only reason he was going to those parties was so he could stuff his pockets with rolls.
Guys, I just want to, my opinion at this point, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, big time.
He sucks so much.
So
He sucks so much that he should be played by Joaquin Phoenix in a movie.
he kept showing up. And he would talk to anyone who listened at the White House why he deserved the Paris consulship.
Denny's didn't exist yet. So he just went
He
to
gave me the
the
consulship of Denny's.
Well, James G. Blaine, he was the Secretary of State during this time. And Guiteau kept seeing Blaine in the hallway, and he was like, Mr. Blaine, I should be appointed to the Paris consulship. And after a few times of Blaine just going, yeah, shut up, and like moving past him, Blaine had had enough, and after a few too many times, he said, listen, dude, I've had enough of what you're saying. Never speak to me about this again.
Blaine from Maine went absolutely insane.
Yeah. And so Guiteau, he did meet with Garfield one time. He was in the presence of Garfield. He handed him his precious speech that he gave. By the way, during that time where he gave his speech, he only gave parts of it because he didn't like the torchlight, and he was just too tired, and there were more people that want to speak, so...
Oh,
yeah.
no, but that did get him elected.
Yeah, he got Garfield elected.
Beautiful.
So he gave Garfield the speech. Again, this speech that he had been crumpled up in his pocket for weeks. He handed Garfield, and Garfield's like picking it apart, and he
It's
goes,
all covered in shit stains.
Yeah, and he's like, okay. And he like goes back into the Oval Office and like shuts the door. And he's like, see, Garfield likes me. Any day now, Garfield will pick me for the Paris consulship.
His proximity to the President of the United States
It's
on
shocking.
a day-to-day basis is ludicrous and preposterous by today's
Well,
standards.
Brown, his secretary, and now Blaine, they're all aware of this guy, and they're like, no one let that dude in. And after Blaine said that to him, Guiteau went back to his rented room, and he like stared at the ceiling, and he's like, it's over for me. It's over. And then he had what he says is divine intervention.
Oh, God.
Where he heard the voice of God tell him that he needs to kill the half-breed Garfield to put the stalwarts in power. Because he was following all of this, and he proclaimed himself as a stalwart.
Oh,
and so he wanted to put the stalwarts in power, and he wanted Arthur to be president. So he thought that he could walk into the White House, shoot the president, no one would care, and he would eventually be vindicated, and he wouldn't see any jail time, he wouldn't be punished at all, because the ruling power of the Republicans at the time, the stalwarts, they would just forgive him.
But then he didn't do it and everything was okay, right?
No. So Charles Guiteau, because he heard a voice from God telling him to kill Garfield, he went to the gun store to buy himself the fanciest gun available. Because he thought that whatever he was going to do was going to be remembered by history, and he was going to become a historical figure. So he wanted to get the coolest gun he could find.
He's like, I want a gold gun with a pearl handle and diamond bullets. Do you guys have those diamond bullets?
It did have a pearl handle.
Oh.
Of course it did.
And when he did, like, he asked the guy if he could hold the gun first, and he held it, and he didn't really he'd never shot a gun before. He doesn't know anything about guns.
He's like, it's got a good grip, flip, weight, and seems good. It's like me holding a gun.
Yeah. So he came back.
Oh, yeah, this is pretty cool.
He came back to the gun store, and
Do
he
I
was
look
like,
cool posing?
here's money up front. He never intended on coming back and paying for the rest of that gun. But he bought some bullets, and he bought the gun, and he goes, where's a good place to try it out? And the guy at the gun store was like, you gotta go outside city limits first. And at that time, he just had to, like, kind of just go out of Washington, D.C.
He walked like 2 feet outside the store.
But he shot it into the river and at some weeds and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think I got it.
Also,
this
there's
is real
no
cool.
way that gun store was doing well.
No,
if
no.
he's like, I'll give you half now, and you give me the gun, and I promise I'll bring you the rest of the money. He's like, yeah, this seems
They're fucking desperate.
And the name of the gun shop owner, his name was John Layaway, and that's when Layaway started.
It's my policy. You lay it away, just like Layaway say.
Now, again, he was stalking Garfield, pretty much. Like, from when he was trying to get a cabinet position until now. He stalked Garfield. He went to church services with Garfield because he thought that no one would ever see an assassination attempt on church grounds, on, like, hallowed ground.
Woof.
So he was gonna shoot him at church, but the only way he could see it is if he went around to the window next to where Garfield was sitting in the church, and if he kind of shot down at him so he wouldn't harm anyone else. But he got too frustrated with what the priest was saying, like during the priest's sermon.
Unrelated to all of this?
Yeah, that he ended up shouting to the priest, like, what do you think of Jesus? And the priest was like,
You get
what? Get him out of here.
the guy in the flip-flops with the jewel-encrusted revolver. Get out of here.
The priest was like, I need you to do two things. I need you to gone, and I need you to get.
Yeah. Well, Garfield even recorded it in his diary. He was like, some crazy dude just started heckling the preacher. You know?
The fact that there's like a creepy stalker wearing a tattered suit and flip-flops with a jewel-encrusted revolver, which, by the way,
It's not jewel encrusted. It just has an ivory handle.
It's fancy.
In my heart, it's jewel encrusted.
Yeah.
It's like
It's not a run-of-the-mill gun.
It's twinkling in the sunlight, while everything else about him is covered in shit and mud, and he's just a raving madman.
Well, and everyone said, like, he looked skinny, like he missed a lot of meals. And anyone who fed him during this time said he was, like, ravenous. So he didn't get a lot of meals, you know?
I still think Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
You're still selling me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were several times where, like, he planned on shooting Garfield, but, like, Lucretia came out too, and he didn't have the heart to shoot Garfield in front of Lucretia. So he didn't do it then.
Yeah.
So
He's
he's a nice guy.
Oh, yeah. That was too... Yeah, he was being
nice guy.
He's no
Tips
Lee
fedora.
Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
God.
But there was one time where Garfield was going to meet Lucretia in Ohio for, like, a small vacation with his children. And a couple of members of his cabinet were going to go with him, including James G. Blaine and Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son.
All going on vacation to sunny Cleveland, Ohio. Nothing but white sand beaches and clear blue lakes in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland didn't exist yet.
Well, okay, Ohio.
Yeah.
We're not Cleveland scientists, Jerry.
I know you're not. So they went out that day, him and Blaine, on a coach to go down to the train station. And what they were talking about is an upcoming speech that Garfield planned to give in Atlanta, Georgia at the time that was going to be controversial. And they were talking about all the ins and outs of it. And the reason why it was controversial is because he was going to talk about black suffrage and the state of Southern Reconstruction. And it was going to be so controversial because he was going to be like, no, everyone needs full equal rights. Not just voting rights, but full equal rights. So this is a
big civil rights speech.
Oh, yeah. And Garfield meant to make that happen.
He's like, water fountains are coming up. We can't have them be segregated.
Yeah.
Schools are going to be coming up. It's a thing that's going to be happening soon. We're all going to be learning how to read. We got to do it in the same place.
Same room.
Same room.
Same bat time.
Same bat channel.
Oh,
same bat room. Same bat books.
Same Baton Rouge.
God damn it. What have I done?
So Gateau beat them to the train station. He's there. He's like prepping himself up. He talked to a coach driver outside and he goes, "Hey man, how much is it for you to take me to the cemetery?" He's like, "I don't know, a couple bucks, who knows?" And he goes, "Good."
Couple bucks?
Because he's planning for his own death. Or the worst of things, And he has a letter in his pocket to William Tecumseh Sherman saying, "I have shot the president. You need to come and you need to occupy the prison that I'm being held in. And once you do that, I will be absolved of all crimes because what I'm doing is good."
And then another smaller note that just said, "Nailed it."
So he went to the bathroom several times. He checked his gun to make sure, everything was
diarrhea.
good. He primped his hair, and he was waiting around and pacing around. And even other people were like, "Yeah, this guy looked super nervous." Garfield and Blaine pull up in the coach and they come out and they're talking and they get a couple of steps inside the door of the train station.
Having a conversation about how a thing called the Secret Service should be invented.
Yes, because and here's, actually that's an interesting note because they didn't really have a Secret Service as we know it today. They did have a Secret Service, but the Secret Service was there to combat fraud and corruption. They weren't there to protect the president.
Which is still under their,
It is. It still is. Under their guidelines.
Yeah.
Under their whole thing. So, they weren't there to protect the president. So he's walking around without any sort of guards or anything. Even after one president has been killed. And their logic in this, at this time, is that, Lincoln was killed because it was during wartime and it was because of the Civil War. But we don't have to just kill presidents because we can just vote them out. So it'd be ridiculous for somebody to try to kill the president.
Again.
I like how the president, just died. I mean,
yeah,
I know.
It was 16 years ago.
It actually was a bit... 16 years ago was...
Not that long ago.
It was 2004.
America, a little slow in the uptake. Just saying.
So Garfield makes it a couple of steps inside the train station. And Gateau comes out of the shadows and shoots Garfield a couple of times in the back. One bullet hitting into his back that went into his chest cavity. The other one hitting him in his arm.
Ouch.
Which actually just went through the meat. It actually didn't hurt him really that much. But the one that went into his body is the one that we're going to talk about. Well, now, there was a female bathroom attendant that saw the whole thing. And she ran over to Garfield and, held him in her arms as this other group of people apprehended Charles Gateau. And as they're apprehending him, wrestling him to the ground and shit, he's screaming, I am a stalwart. I'm a stalwart. Arthur will be president now. Arthur will be president now. And then he's pulling out of his pocket like this thing, and he goes, this is a letter to William Tecumseh Sherman to come and free me from prison. Give this to General Sherman. And they're like, yeah. And they're pulling him away.
The weirdest part, though, is as he rolled up to Garfield, he said, I'm a really big fan of all your songs. And then he shot him, which I thought was a weird choice and would be later used down the road.
No.
Your music saved me.
Yeah.
So they put Garfield on like a hay mattress. This is in a train station. Train stations are dirty places, guys. There's a lot of people coming in.
They're full of hay mattresses.
Well,
it's like a modern day airport.
Yeah, a hay mattress isn't exactly clean either.
Right.
So they put him on it and they kind of move him away. And the first doctor to show up to look after Garfield is a man named Dr. Smith Townsend. And when he gets there, what he does is he takes his bare, unclean finger and he sticks it directly into the wound of Garfield in his back to try to find the bullet.
Like you do.
He tries to dig the bullet out with his bare-ass finger.
I mean, a moist hole, you stick your finger in it, right?
Yeah. Well,
it's infecting him with God knows what,
Right, yeah.
And then several other doctors show up, including a man named Dr. Charles Purvis, who was he'd actually made history several times over
for sticking his fingers into the moist holes of
That's where the name pervert came from.
No, he was actually one of the first black doctors to be
don't
a
make
black
me feel
doctor.
bad for the joke I just made.
He didn't know. He didn't know the race when he made the joke.
Well, sorry.
Turns out you're a racist, Chris.
Turns out Dr. Purvis was the first black doctor to ever attend to a president of the United States.
And was the only doctor who washed his hands before he put them into the fingy holes.
He actually never did put his finger into his wound.
It's like, I don't want to infect the wound.
Yeah.
He's a reasonable doctor.
Meanwhile, all the white doctors are like, let me get in there. I got smaller fingers. I can get in there.
So Robert Todd Lincoln, he showed up like almost right after.
He's like, not again!
Yeah.
Just raring to put his fingers in those holes.
Robert Todd Lincoln actually has this great historical link because he's the only man to be present during 3 presidential assassinations. His own father's, Garfield's, and William McKinley's.
Dude, he's the fucking bad omen. Get him away from people.
And he was the one that called a different doctor to the scene to look after Garfield. And this guy's name was Dr. Willard Bliss.
Wait, was his name Doctor?
His first name was Doctor. His parents named him Dr.
You're
Willard
gonna be a
Bliss.
fucking doctor.
He's
Yeah.
like, well, there goes my music
I
career.
just want to say that it was probably a bad idea to build the Kennedy's car out of his bones.
Look, all I know is that UFO
The Lincoln
totally
Town Car.
wrote a song about Doctor.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a bad case of putting fingers in.
I got a bad case of murdering you.
So, when Bliss got there, he had a probing rod. And what it was is it was this metal rod. And
Who
at
among
the
us
end,
doesn't?
What it was, it was this rod. And at the end, it had this porcelain tip. So when you poked it into someone's wound, and you kind of squiggled
Felt
around
around,
in there,
yeah.
Working around, yeah?
it would make like a ting or like a hit when it touched the bullet, right? So you kind of decipher where the bullet is. But the thing is it's not clean. It's not clean at all. So he's doing this, and like Dr. Purvis is actually like, "Hey guys, can we not poke into his body right now?"
And he's like, but I got this poking rod. I can poke while I'm standing. And meanwhile, Garfield's like,
Well, he kept doing
"Oh."
it. Dr. Bliss kept doing it.
It's not clean because it's laundry day. Nothing's clean. Terminator reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Purvis was like, maybe we should move him before we start poking around.
Before we start like sticking our fingers in his bullet holes and
Putting
shit.
our probing sticks into his
Yeah.
wounds.
And even Bliss, like, he kept putting he kept trying it, and he never
Like-
could. Garfield kept like letting out like these groans of pain, like
Please stop poking me with sticks.
So
Please stop sticking sticks into my bullet holes.
yeah. So finally, they were like, well, let's get Garfield out of here. So they put him into a coach, and they told the guy, listen, we're taking him back to the White House. Go slow, because any bumps might hurt him. So they went really slow, and they went so slow, in fact, that any potholes or anything, people would come along and fill them in, or even pick it up. Like big crowds of people would come along and pick it up because they'd heard all the commotion. They'd pick up the coach and move it over like big.
Everybody's
like,
doing
big
things the
bumps and
wrong
stuff.
way.
Well, no, they're doing it the right way because, yeah, it would have hurt him if he went over all these.
But you gotta get him
jagged-ass
to
bumps.
the hospital and stop sticking sticks in
No,
him.
you gotta not put him in the hospital because at the time, hospitals were these overcrowded, dirty places. They were taking him to the White House, which is much better than a hospital.
Roll him into a river and call it a day.
Yeah, that's probably what you do.
So they carefully carried him into the White House. And for a couple of days, he was kind of in a, not a coma state, but he wasn't
Like in
doing
a funk.
well. Yeah, and there's all these doctors looking after him, and they sent, like, Garfield said, like, send my wife a letter. And all it was like, come to Washington immediately. I've been gravely injured. Please come.
And you wrote that down.
James Garfield.
Yeah.
Professor James Garfield, President-in-Chief...
General.
General.
No, it's President General, President Professor,
Professor.
Doctor
Attorney at law.
James
Bum, bum.
Garfield, Attorney at Law. That is. And honestly, if he didn't write all that out, he probably would have survived. Because
So-
he took the time to do it.
So Lucretia did come, and she wouldn't leave her husband's side, and he really wasn't doing well. And the thing about Bliss that we should all know is that Bliss was a respected doctor like a long time ago, and then wasn't. Because he started practicing these things called homeopathy. And even then, the medical establishment was like, this is a bunch of nonsense, and you need to go away from this.
So he applied the crystals and it didn't save the president.
Well, this is before... Let me continue. It was homeopathy, and another reason why that the established medical community didn't want him back is because he wanted other black doctors to be admitted into the medical community at the time. And they excommunicated him unless he flushed these ideas down the toilet. So not only did he turn his back on homeopathy, which is a good thing,
Right.
but he also turned his back on anyone that he had supported being inside of the medical community that were talented black doctors at this time. So, because of this, because he was reinstated as a doctor now inside of the establishment, he was not going to take any chances. He knew the world was watching, and he wasn't going to take any chances with anything new and experimental. And something that was new around this time was Joseph Lister's idea of antisepsis, which is cleaning your medical tools and making sure that they're sterilized before you operate.
Cleaning your medical tools? Come on.
Yeah, not
What
just
a
washing your
radical
hands.
idea.
Not just washing your hands, but cleaning your tools
Wait.
too.
Washing your hands?
Yeah.
What is that fucking homeopathy pseudoscience bullshit?
And even the people that believed him, they had medical tools with wooden handles that couldn't be sterilized. And even then, they would still drop them on the floor and just pick them up again
Yeah,
and be
fuck
like,
it.
it's
5
cool.
second rule.
Or even hold it in their teeth while they're operating.
Like a pirate.
Yeah, so
They're like, I saw this in an Errol Flynn movie that hasn't come out yet.
People
even
were
if-
tougher back then. It's fine.
So you said that this was Joseph Lister who came up with this?
yes,
Is this the Listerine guy?
Listerine was later named after him.
That's That's pretty cool.
Garfield was really touch and go the first few days. They didn't really know what to do, but keep like his fever and keep his appetite on track. So that's what they were really concentrating on doing. But what they were doing, like, too, like, he didn't really crave a lot, and he couldn't really keep a lot down, but what they were feeding him was, like, whole milk and steak and mashed potatoes and, like, all this really heavy food, and he just couldn't keep it down.
Great for gunshot wounds.
The only thing that he could keep down was oatmeal, which is something that he actually detested.
But...
The problem is, back in the day, they didn't have the McDouble.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, most people don't appreciate the healing power of McDonald's. A couple McDoubles, and you were right as rain.
A couple of McDoubles in a thick gravy.
In a thick gravy.
In a thick gravy. Now, it wouldn't take long before the news reached Arthur and Conkling. Now, being stalwarts, and the assassin screaming, "I am a stalwart! Arthur is going to be president now."
Doesn't look good.
The American public instantly blamed Arthur for Garfield's assassination.
What about Conkling? Did they blame him too?
Oh, yeah, they did not like him. So they went to the Fifth Avenue Hotel, a place where Conkling frequented, and it was full of people, and it was full of reporters. And, like, Arthur being, like, a sweaty, almost crying on the verge of tears mess, Conkling went straight to his room. But Arthur, like, walked up to some reporters and he said, "How's Garfield doing?" And they're like, "Wasn't it because of you?" And he, like, "No." And he, like, ran away. You know, like, he felt so bad about all of this. And especially that people were blaming him because he is the only one that stands to gain anything by Garfield being assassinated.
Right.
It's like if Oswald was yelling about Johnson's president now.
Yeah, exactly.
Except that Johnson has no conscience, so it didn't quite.
Yeah, Arthur did. Yeah. So Bliss picked his people carefully. He picked a couple of surgeons that were very close to him to work on Garfield.
Emotionally close to him.
Well,
Sexually.
people that would listen to whatever Bliss said, because it was also a point of pride for Bliss that whatever he said went, right? Because he was the most senior doctor.
He didn't want to hear anything about these things called germs.
No, nothing new.
We're going to dig in with probes. We're going to dig in with our hands. We're going to get this done, no matter how many abscesses form and no matter how red the wounds get.
No matter how abscesses I got to stick my fingers into, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, too, the medical community felt that pus was a good thing to see. Like, healthy pus was a good thing for most doctors to see. They would even say, like, "I pride myself in seeing healthy pus in my patients." And
I mean, I generally,
Bliss
if I
is
see
no
pus,
way.
I'm in a pretty good mood.
Who are you, Dr. Pimple Popper?
Yeah, I know, that's what I was
So
saying.
gross.
This whole thing reminds me
That
of
was a joke. I was kidding. That's disgusting.
I gagged. Ugh.
so they would try to keep Garfield's room as cool as they could, but it was
They were playing jazz music, velvet everywhere, just trying to keep things as cool as they could.
There's at least
I
3
thought you were playing
skateboards.
Velvet Underground.
All the doctors were wearing velour jumpsuits.
Yeah. No, it was an 80 degrees inside the room the whole time.
What?
Ooh.
A nice,
And-
cool 80 degrees.
Yeah. And they actually the military came up with the first air conditioning system
Oh.
for Garfield during this time.
Working at a cool 80.
Well, what they did is they rigged together a electric fan, which took much work to do. And what they were going to do is their first idea was to put these chilled curtains in his room and to just blow a fan across that. And they were like, well, that's not going to work. Because their first idea was to just put ice in the room above him and figuring that they would just calm down. That didn't work.
Well,
So
it'll drip, drip.
Meanwhile, one crazy doctor was like, "Have him eat some moldy bread."
No,
and they were like,
no.
"Get him out of here!"
So what they did is they had these chilled cheesecloth in front of this fan, and it would blow across the cheesecloth to cool down the room.
Ooh.
Now, it sort of worked, but not really. It's more of a swamp cooler, but
Sure.
a less refined one. But the thing is Garfield himself, although he was in a lot of pain during all of this, an excruciating amount of pain, he yelled, "Turn that goddamn thing off!" because it was so loud, and he couldn't sleep with it on. The fan itself was so loud.
I do like some white noise, so...
I mean, that is some very, very...
Some loud-ass white noise.
Now,
Yeah.
for a while, Garfield rallied, and he kind of came back. So much so that, like, Lucretia, like, wrote back to, like, her family, and she's like,
He's gonna make it.
he's doing good. He's doing really great. I've no doubt that he's going to survive. And a lot of people at the time, they're like, look at the people that have survived gunshots from the Civil War. There's so many people during this time that are walking around, right as rain, with lead in their body. With a big old lead ball inside their body, and they're totally fine.
They only have one limb hacksawed off, and they're very addicted to morphine, but they're fine!
They're otherwise okay. So the point is that, yeah, everyone was like, yeah, I think he's going to be okay. You know, once he the fever comes down and everything, he's going to be okay. And everyone was thinking he was gonna be okay.
But he wasn't, was he?
He wasn't. So he took a turn for the worst. What happened is he got a real bad fever. And he started developing these boils, these abscesses on top of his skin.
Oh, I bet those doctors couldn't wait to put the fingers in those.
Well, what it is it's what it basically is.
It was a need for cowbell.
He
needed more cowbell. He had a fever.
It's pus acne. So basically, your blood is so poisoned
That you
with
become a
pus
hot teen.
that your body starts developing all these boils and acne that is just filled with pus on your body.
So
And
pus
so-
boils.
Well,
And he
yeah, but
started
it's
getting
acne,
hair in funny
basically.
places, started thinking about
Sure,
girls.
that's,
it's perfectly
The
natural.
grossest thing I've ever heard in my entire
He
life.
got one
On
in his saliva gland in his face.
off.
So much so that when they had to cut it open, because it grew really big, that when they had to cut it open, he almost drowned in pus because of it. Several of them were forming in his lungs, that he got pneumonia, because again, pneumonia is fluid in your lungs. Well, he got pneumonia because pus was filling his lungs.
So they were like, turns out too much pus is a bad thing.
Yeah, but not willing to admit it. Bliss, even, as he was trying to cut these abscesses on Garfield, had cut his own hand, and some of Garfield's poisoned-ass blood got inside of Bliss's wound, and it became so infected that he had to, like, put it in a sling, and that wasn't enough.
And he's
to
like,
tell
it's
him that
good.
this
It's
isn't
a good
bad."
thing that this is happening.
Yeah.
So,
Right,
moral of the story is
guys?
trust modern science.
Well,
At least today.
Yes.
I am beyond nauseous just
I know.
envisioning
It's gonna
this.
get worse. It's gonna get worse.
Oh,
Awesome.
I cannot wait.
He's gonna turn into all pus.
So one of the few things that Garfield could keep down was milk.
Pus.
Milk,
Was pus.
because at the time
They're feeding him on his own pus.
the White House had a milk cow, and when the public learned that one of the only things he could keep down was milk, a lot of people gave him other milk cows.
There's an outpouring of breast milk.
I was about to say.
If anything, they were like,
A bunch of au pairs show up at the
what's the
front
second
door.
closest
They're just
thing?
like, I'm willing to spare my nipple
I
to
was
the
like, what's the
president
second
of the
closest
United
thing
States.
to pus? It's, to milk, is pus. We'll give him our pus.
The pus comes, the milk
Jug
goes
after
in, the
jug
pus
of
goes
pus.
out.
Just so much pus was given to the president from our society. They were like, ask not what your country can do
Pus
for you. Ask how much pus you can give to your country.
So yeah, even one of his like maids of the time that was gonna give him milk, like secretly like put holy water in his milk to try to heal him.
Oh no!
Because everyone, the one thing that is to be said about all of this is that during this time, the South and the North and everybody united. Everyone loved Garfield. Garfield was one of those paragons of virtue.
One
And
dude
everyone
didn't like
loved
him.
Yeah, and one lunatic is the one who shot him. But
John Arbuckle.
But the whole nation grieved for him, you know, and was worried about him. So everyone was doing their part. Now, when he couldn't keep things down, when he fell back into despair
From all that milk. He had a milk nap pretty hard.
well, and all this heavy food that they're feeding him,
I like that he's dying of a gunshot wound. They're like, give him more milk and steak.
and
Milk steak.
potatoes.
Clean out his pus and put more potatoes in his fucking mouth.
Milk steak and jelly
No.
beans.
Yeah, I know.
He
Boiled
would
hard.
he would throw up like
It's the same thing.
At that point in time, like, how much did he vomit?
several times an hour.
Several times an hour. Fuck, he would have such a killer Victoria's Secret body.
Also, yeah, the good news is he could wear it.
He went from 210 pounds to 130 pounds.
You said he was
Smoking hot.
He could wear
You said it was
anything.
220 earlier.
Well, at the time of his assassination, it was 210.
Oh, he lost 10 pounds in his presidency.
Yeah.
You know, the stress.
Stress of it all. Well, Dr. Bliss came up with a new method of feeding Garfield.
With a spoon.
Rectally.
Oh,
nice.
no.
So-
Rectal mashed potatoes?
No.
Rectal puss.
Just
No.
smash it in.
He used a mixture of beef bouillon, hydrochloric acid,
Nice.
Oh,
milk, sometimes whiskey,
Who?
egg yolk, and oatmeal. Now,
This guy's a genius scientist that I cannot...
sometimes
He is a Nazi scientist.
Now, sometimes this mixture became too thick. Now,
Oh, really?
a too thick of a mixture could actually work against malnutrition. So he was like,
You mean shoving all that shit up his ass wasn't working?
well, it was to combat malnutrition, but sometimes it was too thick that his body couldn't break it down going through his ass, that it would actually contribute to malnutrition. So he came up with a couple of different mixtures and ideas,
You gotta
but it
thin
wasn't
out.
working.
Thin it out with poison. I think that'll help.
Well, he
Yeah.
put whiskey in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they would keep giving him like daily doses of like brandy and
They
morphine.
hadn't invented water yet, so just mix it up with whiskey.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, dude. So surgeons of the time, they were like, I see nothing wrong with just using good old warm water. And warm water carries bacteria and viruses better than anything
And
else.
this was
They're like
The
tepid.
1880s,
They want
right?
tepid water.
1880s,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. So it's like about 30, 40 years before
like-
Typhoid Mary?
Yeah. It's like 10 years before germs are actually accepted as reality.
Jesus.
Lucretia's hair was even like falling out. She wore this like thing over her head, and people thought that it was like some sort of like symbol. And they're like, "Look at how strong Lucretia is," and she was like, "I'm not strong at all. I feel so
freaking
horrible."
the fuck out, man.
Because people that knew Garfield as this big, strong, hearty laugh, give you a big old bear hug kind of guy is now laying in a bed in the White House, a skeleton, a shell of the man.
At
that
this
he
point,
was.
how many weeks has it been?
It was 11 weeks all told that he would spend in the White House going through all of this. All these weeks of Garfield coming in and out. Dr. Bliss even threw a Hail Mary pass and
it won the game.
Asked Alexander Graham Bell
the telephone guy.
to come in to see if he could help the president. Because Alexander Graham Bell had found out just a couple of years earlier that the telephone worked. But he'd also figured out, while he was inventing the telephone, that if you came up with this certain way of wrapping the coils, you come up with something called an induction balance, which cancels out the voice-to-voice speaking. But what it does is it reacts to metal. certain kinds of metal. Metals that are conductors.
Ferrous metal.
So, copper, gold, things like this. And Bliss was sure that it was on the right side of Garfield.
Because that's where the bullet went
in, right? So he was sure. He was positive of this happening. And he was so conscious of his own prestige going on. And he knew the whole world was looking, right? So he brought in Alexander Graham Bell, who had worked for weeks to work on this induction balance. A portable induction balance. The metal detector was also invented to find a bullet inside of Garfield. The only problem with it is bullets are made out of lead and not other metals that are
more ferrous.
More ferrous. Better conductors of
like
electricity. Like copper or
gold,
silver.
Right.
So Alexander Graham Bell even said, I wish our bullets were made out of silver.
I also wish that Garfield was a werewolf, because that would make this whole situation a lot easier.
So it would have killed him immediately.
It would have killed him, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but they would have found the bullet right away.
Because the bullet would have been on the ground.
Well, to that point...
Well, I mean, that's under, Blade logic, where he would have, disintegrated. I mean, we don't know if that's the way werewolves actually work, so thank you very much,
To that point, though, Graham Bell had perfected the induction balance so much that he put these capacitors in to make it more sensitive to all metals, right? Because at first he could only pick up really ferrous metals, right? Well, now he could pick up most metal. So he knew it worked, and he knew he could make it portable to a certain extent. So they came to the White House, and he waved his induction balance over Garfield. But Bliss would only let him wave it over the right side of Garfield.
Oh, because he wanted to be right.
Because he knew that that's where the bullet was going to be.
In addition to that, Graham Bell also, for some reason, had an earpiece that he held up to his ear, and he kept on going, ahoy hoy!
Ahoy hoy!
Ahoy hoy!
Ahoy hoy!
Hoping that somehow that would...
I actually know that because of The Simpsons, so that's sort of a Simpsons reference.
Well, because Alexander Graham Bell, when he first envisioned the telephone, ahoy, the way to answer the telephone would be ahoy hoy.
That is why Mr. Burns in The Simpsons answers the phone ahoy hoy.
Because he's that old.
Yeah, that's the joke.
They get there, and they're testing it. They're putting it on Garfield's body, and they hear a slight noise. Bliss is like, yep, I hear it. There it is. It's there. And Bell's like, I don't know. That's not the sound we had in the lab, in his vocal lab. And so he goes, okay, Lucretia, come over here, and you listen. You're not a part of this. You listen. And she goes, yeah, I hear something. And he goes, okay, yeah. I guess it's there, and Bliss is like, okay, great, see you later, and shoot him away. But Alexander Graham Bell is like, no, man, that's not the sound I heard when this thing worked.
Right.
And so he's like, well, how did I go wrong? Is it because of the springs in the mattress that he's laying on that interfered with it? And he goes, well, if that's the truth, no matter where I move the induction balance on him, it would produce the same sound.
Right.
So, no, that's not right.
Or it's because
that it was right next to the bullet, but not actually on the bullet.
Ugh.
He knew that his thing worked. He knew that the induction balance worked. And they actually used the induction balance up until World War I, actually. When they didn't have, X-rays or anything like that, To
find mines?
They had these portable induction balances to find bullets.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, during the Boer War as well. Anyway, he went back dejected. It kind of ruined his life for a little while. Because he knew it worked, But Bliss was like, all right, shoo.
Right.
So on September 5th, after, again, I think 11 weeks, 11 weeks of being in all of this, Garfield was like, look, I love the sea.
Can I just die?
I love the sea.
I
feel like I'm dying. If I'm going to die, I want to be able to see the sea. And so he wanted to go to Elberon, Massachusetts, to this cottage where he had friends there.
I thought it was a Star Wars reference, my bad.
Is this the same cottage that Typhoid Mary was at?
No. And that was Oyster Bay, New York. Long Island. No, Elberon.
Not that far away.
he wanted to go there, and he wanted to go there without Bliss.
Yeah, fuck Bliss.
Yeah. So, what happened is that he picked the day, there was a special train made to take the president there, that everything was made to where the bumps weren't as big, and the dust was kept down. Like, they put heavy curtains and carpeting in to keep the dust down, to, like, catch the dust.
Sure.
And, like, they went really slow.
They played
Fog
Hat all the way there. It was just slow ride.
Oh, right.
And even that was half speed.
Yeah.
Take
it easy, baby, bam.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask whether or not that meant that the train had some sort of suspension.
I don't know if it had suspension, but they took everything to make sure it wasn't as bumpy. They took all the seats out. It was only for Garfield and the people that were going to Elberod.
Garfield and friends.
Yes, there you go.
There.
Like the egg with the legs.
The egg with the legs and the rest of the guys.
I think the most moving fact about all of this is
probably the train.
No, the fact that every station that they would come to, there would be these big groups that would show up. Everyone said, no one say anything, no one be loud, because it might wake and disturb the president. So, as the president's slow-ass train came through all these stations with all these crowds of people that were there to, like, usher him on, it was completely silent. Completely silent, which I think is just absolutely insane. I can't imagine a giant group of people being so silent out of respect for a president, nonetheless.
Right. Well, especially during our current times.
Yeah.
They were holding trays of hot lasagna above their heads.
They said, no Monday, no Monday, no Monday.
Please don't tell me that he died on a Monday.
We're going thick with the Garfield.
If he died on a Monday, I will kill myself.
No.
On a Monday.
You know he didn't die on a Monday?
I do. Cruz had worked around the clock, like all night, too, to lay new track, to take his train right up to the door of the cottage he was going to stay at.
Oh, damn. That's some service.
Yeah.
Does that track still exist to this day?
Actually, I don't know. That'd be really interesting.
Does that cottage still exist to this day?
I really don't know. But it took him right up to the door. They carted him out, and Garfield looked at the room for like 1 second, and he goes, "Point the bed towards the window, for God's sakes, so I can look out the window at the sea. That's the whole reason I'm here." So they did, and Garfield got worse. And he got worse. And he got worse.
He was ready to go.
On September 19th, 1881, at 10 p.m., one of his closest confidants, Swain, who was also a member of his cabinet, he said, he woke up in the middle of the night and he said, "Oh my, I have a pain right here." And he grabbed his heart and he kept saying, "Swain, Swain, Swain." And he goes, "Oh no." And he went and got Lucretia and he got all these people and they stood around him for Garfield's final moments. And he died in the bed there at Elberon. As the news went out, there was this grand national mourning of their president. We're going to get to, in the next episode, we're going to get to Arthur's response to this. I think it's incredibly heartbreaking. It was such a big thing that when they put him back on the same train that it took him there, they dressed it all in black, and all the places that they had passed from in between Elberon and Washington, D.C., they dressed everything in black, and everyone, again, was still very silent as they took him back to the capital. Now, there was one doctor that performed an autopsy on him that took 4 hours, and the autopsy revealed that the bullet itself was on the left side of Garfield.
Of course it was.
Oh, so Bliss is full of shit?
Yeah.
It's scooted.
Now, the one side that they kept probing into had created this giant cavity inside of Garfield that had completely had been infected and just full of pus. It was totally, completely full of pus.
So
when
healthy.
I hear pus is a good thing?
Yeah.
It was bad. It was so bad. His heart he was covered in abscesses inside. It was clear that he was rotting from the inside out.
That's fucking
he was
brutal.
riddled.
He was pooping white.
He was yeah. He was yeah.
No, that
he
was
was riddled. He was riddled with abscesses, and he was dying of sepsis. That's what I mean. Sepsis, which is blood poisoning, and his heart was hemorrhaging, which is probably what he died from. He had pneumonia, but the pneumonia again was not brought on by just simply fluid in his lungs, but pus in his lungs. The next day, September 20th, Arthur was sworn into office. We'll get into this whole story of Arthur in the next episode because it's vastly interesting. But we haven't talked about what's happening to Charles Guiteau at this time.
Yeah, what's going on?
Gadot.
So what happened to him?
Gal Gadot?
That's what I said, yes.
So he was sitting in this jail cell, and he was thinking that Sherman's going to come along and he's going to occupy the jail. No. Actually, there was a bunch of people that wanted Guiteau hung right then and there. And they wanted him hung immediately.
But he wasn't hung.
And they never stopped. They didn't even want to give him a trial or anything like that. In fact, 600 black men got together in a lynching party for Guiteau. During this time. Isn't that kind of a strange, turn?
How the turntables.
Yeah.
The turntables have turned.
He was actually shot at by a guard, and it missed.
Jesus.
But he had no regret, and he still thought that what he had done was a good thing. Because none of the news of Garfield's health or anything like that had come back to him. So he was sitting there thinking that any day now, Sherman's going to be there. Sherman did come, but he was there to protect the jail from the people trying to hang him without a trial.
Fuck.
When he finally did go to court, his brother-in-law, his last name was Scoville, he was a patent lawyer. He actually had nothing to do with anything like this. He was not...
It's like, oh boy, this is a big case. I don't know how to deal with this.
He wasn't
like he's more
at all equipped to deal with a criminal case like
than
this.
Somebody who has no lawyer experience.
Well, Guiteau wanted to defend himself, but the judge denied it.
He's like,
and the judge denied it because Guiteau's defense was one of the first defenses of insanity. He was pleading insanity, and he's like, "I'm going to represent myself. I'm a lawyer."
You can't plead insanity yourself.
Well, you can't plead insanity and then represent yourself.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You can't rep your... Because then you're not... Clearly don't know what's... Yeah, that makes no fucking sense.
He's like, okay, so I'm a lawyer, and so let me get this straight. You stole the plans for the whirligig, right? You stole that patent? He's like, no, I killed the president. He's like, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
He's like, you killed the president so you could steal the Jack Ruby.
Yeah.
Dude,
so
the Jack Ruby?
Yeah. That is a Simpsons reference.
The insanity plea was looked down upon. It was new, and it was looked down upon at this time.
It was
as
a hot new plea.
It was a scapegoat plea.
Right.
It was viewed as that way, especially towards Guiteau. Because Guiteau was saying, look, I wasn't crazy beforehand. I wasn't crazy after. I was only crazy when I shot him.
And you're also able to explain that yourself. So
yes.
Fuck off.
And the only thing that Guiteau said that was actually true is, I didn't kill the president. His doctors killed the president.
Which was true.
Which was true. It was the only thing he said that was actually true. But he shot the fucking gun.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
The injuries were caused by what he did.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think modern medicine would have saved Garfield easily.
Oh my God. Honestly, if they would have done nothing to Garfield, honestly, left him alone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they left him alone and did nothing to Garfield, he would have survived.
Well, there were a lot of guys, but I mean,
the Civil War.
Though,
again, there's a lot of people walking around with lead bullets inside of them.
Andrew Jackson.
If they would have poured alcohol on it and then wrapped the wounds, he probably would have survived.
He would have been totally fine. Yep.
Well,
yeah.
But they got Dr. Nick on the fucking case.
Yeah.
Well, another Simpsons reference. And so where are we at, guys? What's going on?
January 26th, 1882, Charles Guiteau was found guilty. No one was buying his fucking insanity plea. To cheers from the audience. And people bought tickets to see
How'd they kill him?
Cases. Well, I'm getting there. Jesus, you jumping the gun? You trying to hurry me along here?
Yeah. Yes, we are. We want to know now. Fuck this guy.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to death.
Cool.
And he demanded a pardon from his good friend, he claimed, Chester A. Arthur. He's like, I know Chester Arthur. He's my friend. He'll let me out. He will pardon me. Chester Arthur either never got the letter or never responded to it. Because he never got pardoned.
And that's when Chester A. Arthur said, pardon me, and left
that
the dinner
probably
table.
would have looked really bad for Chester A. Arthur if he had pardoned the guy who had shot the guy who made him you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people that were, I should say, there was 2 people that were trying to get either a stay of execution until they could display more of an insanity case on behalf of Charles Guiteau, or just a life in prison, live your life in a sanatorium type of thing, is what they kind of wanted. And those 2 people were Charles Guiteau's brother and his sister, Frances Scoville, and her husband represented him. And Frances Scoville, actually, she wrote a letter to Lucretia that she probably never got. But right after she had sent the letter, Frances Scoville actually showed up at Lucretia's house. And Lucretia went in without even looking at her. Mm-hmm. And when, her servants and whatnot said, oh, Frances Scoville, Charles Guiteau's sister, wants to speak with you on behalf of Charles Guiteau's innocence, Lucretia got so pissed off, and she was like, tell her to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Seriously, that man deserves nothing.
Do not wrap me into this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. The purveying thing is that Charles Guiteau deserves nothing. No sympathy, no nothing. He deserves everything he gets that's coming to him, including his death sentence.
Except for the last meal and any snacks that he gets, because he doesn't deserve those. He only deserves the death stuff.
He had made a friend of the priest that comes into death row inmates and tries to usher you into death.
Try to shake him down for snacks.
They give you peace. They give you peace, And he had made friends with this guy, and he had written this long, rambling speech that he was going to make for his day of execution. And so June 30th, 1882, Charles Guiteau was taken out of his cell, and he said, could I give the executioner a signal to begin? Because he was sentenced to hang by the neck until he died. He wanted to read his speech, and then once he dropped it, he could be hung. Yes.
Fucking incels with their goddamn manifestos.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is.
Oh, I'm not going to read it. What I will say is that he read the first half of it. It was straight out of the Bible. I think parts of it were out of Matthew and things like this. But then he got to certain parts where I guess it's told in the perspective, in the perspective of a boy. So he read it in falsetto, sort of a sing-song voice. And it was like, glory, glory, glory. Glory, glory, glory.
Did they cut him off and kill him?
No, he kept saying it over and over again.
Oh, fuck this guy.
And he finally... Look, again, people bought tickets to his execution. 150 people were let in. Over 1,000 people were outside waiting for him.
They had those big old horn, the big old cones, and they're on the wall. Is he dead yet? I'll tell you when he's dead.
Those old-timey, listening cones.
Wow.
So he dropped the speech, and boom! He was hung, his neck broke, and he was dead. And instantly, they started auctioning off chunks of the rope and pieces of his clothes to the audience.
I will say he got a better death than Garfield.
He did. He did.
Yeah,
Garfield
he died
had a painful, excruciating death. Garfield never complained. He actually never showed any signs of pain. Garfield was the most positive person in the room the whole time as he was dying in excruciating amounts of pain.
It makes it even worse.
He would say things.
So good.
He'd make like witty quips and shit to people around him, even though like
He'd
the
be like,
pain
"You
must
should
have been
see the
unbearable."
other guy.
Yeah, the pain must have been unbearable, but he kept doing. He did it. He was totally positive and clear of mind up until the point he died.
Gateau deserved.
Whereas Gateau
that
was a
level of
coward
pain.
the entire time of his life. Dr. Bliss, he would have a stroke 7 years later, and he would be incapacitated, and he would later die of complications.
He was like,
of that.
"Bye, everybody."
Yeah, he would live to see his methods being broken down. He would live to see himself become a pariah, as he should.
Good, fuck
Right.
that guy.
He would live to see all of that, and he deserves it, every minute of it. Lucretia, she returned home in Ohio. Her main objective through the rest of her life would be to defend Garfield's legacy, because Garfield, on his deathbed, he was worried that history would not remember him, because he had only served for a few months as president, and he was really worried that no one would ever remember what he thought or cared about. And so she dedicated her life to preserving that. So she dedicated the second floor of her own farmhouse to the first ever presidential library in existence. And yeah, it was the Garfield Presidential Library.
Of pornography.
There was also, in this presidential library, there was a vault. So in the vault, Lucretia put not only a wreath that was sent by Queen Victoria during Garfield's funeral, but also all of Lucretia and James's love letters to each other. And they're there to this day.
Aw,
That's pretty adorable.
that is.
And a quick thing as we're ending this, Garfield's daughter, Molly Garfield, who really never got over her father's assassination, ended up falling in love with Garfield's trusted secretary, Joseph Stanley Brown, and they ended up getting married.
Aww.
Aw.
And they're still alive to this day. Happily married.
I want to tell you what happens next with Arthur's presidency, because it's insanely inspiring story. And I want to tell you Arthur's side of the story as this whole thing was playing out. Because the way Arthur came out of this, this would never happen again. Yeah. It's only happened one time in American politics, and it was with Arthur. And I feel that Arthur is one of the most ignored presidents and one of the most obscure presidents in American history. And I think that's a crime.
Well,
that's quite the story.
Seriously, this is a crazy story, and it's going to continue.
Because you guys want to hear what actually, how it all ends, actually.
Yeah.
Because we're not done. Like, it doesn't end with Garfield.
Right now, this is straight up Monty Python and the Holy Grail intermission time.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Well, and we're going to rewind a little bit, because we're going to go through Arthur and who the man Arthur was, and we're going to talk about that too. So I want, like, this is not like a sequel, and this is not like a series like how we've done with like Red Cloud or the Mexican Revolution or Aguirre or anything like that. Like, this is more of a companion piece, so you can listen to them independently of each other, but they really go together.
Right.
Really go together. And I do want you to hear how it all ends up panning out.
And we're excited to tell you it.
Oh, so excited.
I'm so excited to learn about it.
And keep sending us your requests to HistoryBoizPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and it means so much to us.
Dude.
Oh, it truly does. We love hearing from you.
And like we've said before, like, it doesn't have to be a suggestion of what topic. Tell us how you're doing. How are you doing in this trying time?
We like to hear from you. We just like talking to you.
And with that, I'm Tyler Armentrout. I'm a history boy sitting next to Jerry Nash.
I'm Jerry Nash. I'm a history boy. Again, follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We love all of our listeners. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm Zach Mack, and I'm also a history boy.
And last and definitely least, Chris Whedon, history boy.
All right.
Zach, do the thing.
Love you. Bye.